Welcome to the r/Kollywood podcast. This is our 22nd episode today, and we really want to thank all of our subscribers who are subscribed to our channel. And for those of you who are watching this without subscribing, please consider doing so. And we're going to be going back nostalgia memory lane to talk about a film that is celebrating 25 years in Kollywood or Tamil cinema. So this film was the second film by this specific director and the 32nd film from this actor, and I think the fifth film in order of releases for this actress. And when you think about this film, I don't think there can be anybody who sort of sits in the middle. There are going to be people, I think, who are going to really, really like this film, or people who really, really don't like this film. So, yes, we are going to be talking today about Kushi, which celebrates 25 years of having released since 2000. So, in today's episode, I'm joined by Dart. Hello, Dart.
Hey Pirate, so nice to be here.
Yeah, really excited to talk about today's film. So, yeah,
Yeah, I missed out on the content podcast. So and you guys had done such a good job with it. So after that, I was kind of waiting when I was already here listening to content. I was like, I'm ready for Kushi because it carries a lot of gravitas into the film journey of not just Vijay. I mean, of entire Kollywood somewhere. It did have a big impact around that time. So really excited to be here.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to segue into this discussion first by I think in today's episode, let's try and focus a lot on the writing aspects of Kushi. There's a lot I think that goes into the filmmaking aspects of it, but I think what's interesting whenever I think about S.J. Surya's films is the writing and the conception. So I do want to talk about first, like all of these stories start with like a basic premise or an idea or a germline, right? So when we think about Kushi, Dart, what do you think is unique or fresh about the idea, or do you think it is? What do you just think about Kushi's germline of an idea?
So I feel what S.J. Surya did really well out here, right? He did the same in kind of Anbe Airure also. He kind of, as a narrator, he takes the first few minutes to explain what is the setup of the movie. He does that very well in Kushi too. And I think he almost tells us that these two babies or two hearts are meant to be together. They're gonna fall in love. It is gonna happen. Let us just sit and watch how it happens. So he puts that out very well, very early into the movie. So we already know that this is a movie where the guy and girl are gonna get together. So before this, like Kushik Munadi Vanda love story, Lala, I would say there are lots of stories where it is the guy and girl are already in love and then they have like parent struggle or something like that. I mean, I'm not taking Maniratnam into this picture, but outside of everything Maniratnam, ஸோ அது மாதிரி தான் போயிட்டு இருக்கு. அப்படி பார்க்குறப்போ குஷி வாஸ் கைண்ட் ஆஃப் அ லிட்டில் ஃப்ரெஷ் இன் தட் வேஸ் வேர் இட் வாஸ் ஷோயிங் ஹவு அ பாய் அண்ட் கேர்ள் வேர் ஃபாலோயிங் இன் லவ் பிகாஸ் the I love you happens in this movie only at the end of the movie, like the last frame. So how what is the story till then is what was captured in Kushi. I felt that kind of made it stand a little different from the other movies of its generation, at least the generation before.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned that like the explicit. So what's interesting for me about this is like all the points you said like really well. I think this is definitely different from. I think there may be a few films that may have been similar to this, but nothing as explicit in messaging like you mentioned about what the purpose of the movie is. So it's funny, like for a lot of people, I think they probably don't feel a tension whether these two characters are going to get together or not because SJ Surya really makes it clear at the beginning in his narration, right? These people are going to get together. How are they going to get together? So, in
I
some
mean, the
elements,
tension part,
yeah,
right? Just because you use that word,
uh huh,
even though SJ Surya tells that in the starting of the movie, like when you're watching a movie, you forget all that. Like you get into the world of the movie, right?
Right.
So if you ask me, I kind of still remember when I was watching it for the first time and stuff. When in the Kadasi scene, lala, when they are like swapping between Central Station and Egmore Station, I kind of remember the tension was still very much visible on the screen and with a house full audience. Everybody knew they were gonna get together, but they were like, why are they not? ஏன் ரெண்டு பேரும் பாத்துக்க மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க? Why didn't they pick up the call, you know? So
Yeah.
I feel the tension was kind of sustained because all of us so badly were rooting for both of them to get together.
Yeah, and I suppose the second thing was you mentioned, like, yes, the explicit acknowledgement of love happens in the end, and I think that takes its time. It takes all of that to happen, but I feel like right from the get go when they first meet at the temple, like what's funny about this movie for me as the idea is that there is no conflict. The only conflict is between the two of them, and I think there have been movies that have happened afterwards. Like you said, there is nothing that's stopping these two people coming together except that these two people. And
Yeah.
what is also so interesting about it is this sort of like chess game that happens between the two of them, where they know that they both like each other, and there is this element of, I don't know for what, but you can see through, we'll talk about their characters in a bit, but there's, I think the interesting USP of this idea is that how long can you take a movie for where these two people know that they like each other, and yet they're not going to acknowledge it. It'll come out in fights in different ways, but they still just won't like say it to each other.
Yeah, but Pirate, honestly, even though it like பார்க்குறப்போ இது சின்ன பிள்ளைத்தனமா இருக்கும், like the love between these two guys, but what is very interesting and what makes Kushi successful for me, it is a very it's in human nature for us to do something so stupid like that, you know, like and especially when love comes into the picture, like most of the times the people we hurt the most are the people we love the most, and that's it's just an unfortunate side effect of being a human being, you know. So but this movie kind of captures that, and I think everybody kind of relates to that in some way. So that I think that is one of the reasons this movie kind of was a huge success and everybody was able to relate to it in a small way.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, cool. So I think we've got like the general idea of what, or we talked about the idea of this film. So next, I think what I want to do is, let's dive into the characters, because okay, so there are like a lot of supporting cast and everything, but obviously they are all just extras for these two people, and emphasizing these two people's characters. So we'll just talk about Shiva and Jenny. Okay, so that where do you want to begin? What do you want to sort of start with for these two characters?
Well, so this movie, right? Like we were talking just before the podcast, like SJ Surya does such a good job of telling us exactly who Shiva is and who Jenny is right from their birth. Like
Mhm.
we kind of follow their journey for a very long time, and the movie makes sure again, like we see older Vijay and older Jyotika. I mean, not older, but older than being a baby. Uh, and only after like the 30-minute point, and it's the story of the babies goes on for so long, like they kind of and the kai kothiktu in the sari shop and all that.
Mhm.
So all those scenes, so it's almost like we have known them for a while. There's also like a scene of Jyotika as being a kid and like talking to her dad about going on an scouts camp and all that, right? So all those scenes are still set up. So what this movie does really well, it is talking about the characters of Shiva and Jenny, and keeping the actors almost out, because this is the story of those two babies, how they grow up to end up locking their lips in front of Kutralam, you know. So I feel S.J. Surya did a really good job of making the focus of this movie entirely the characters.
Mhm. I would say yes, absolutely agree to that. I think what's also interesting is that these characters are always in situations where either they're helping or they're surrounded by like uh, other love stories, and it's like an interesting thing because in the initial part, like Jenny's character is shaped a little bit by the incident that happens where her prospective like bridegroom runs away, and that sort of has some sort of impact to her, and he leaves behind a letter explaining that he's doing this because he loves somebody else. And you sort of set this stage for, I don't think she actually even says this in the movie. She's never had this sort of experience about somebody else before. It sets up that stage really nicely. And then when you get into the college, there's also the aspect that you can see that it's their relationship is contrasted by the relationship with Nagendra Prasad and his girlfriend, and whether or not they're going to join together, when there's like a clear opposition to their love, not from themselves but from like an external force like her father. um, so I think like having set it in that particular way, to some extent, when you see that, I think it feels like their situation is a little bit trivial. But I think what like is well set up by SJ Surya is that these two characters, we haven't been like we haven't established that they are like really um arrogant, or they are actually like super obnoxious, or they behave this way towards anybody else. Like for example, one thing I always thought, and rewatching this a couple of times kind of helped me understand Jenny a little bit more, is that she's not somebody who's like, I'm going to do things my way or the highway, right? So now, first time Param Pathamodu, I came in with the expectation that she wants to do this MSc in MCC, so she's just gonna like not listen to her father. But then after rewatching it like a couple of years ago, is when I realized like no, she does listen to her father. There's like some sense in her where she's happy when her father's happy. She actually accepts and tries to marry the guy her father points to.
Yeah, and not just once.
Yeah. So there's a sense that she's not this person. But then, and Vijay's character is in this way where he's overburdened with love. His mother's like someone who's emotionally connective, and he's kind of very aware of that, and he's trying to sort of
Yeah.
be distant towards it. That's how you sort of establish his character overall. And so when these two people meet, it's just sort of like a it's like you don't know where this
That was
characterization comes.
Pirate. You put that out so well. I'm really like the like how Jenny's character was shaped with the relationship with her dad, which was established very well again in the first 30 minutes or so, and
Hmm.
again Vijay's relationship with his mom, like so in some ways we kind of feel that they both felt love from their parents in a different way, but they felt it very strongly, like
Hmm.
from the time they were a kid. And so now, like bringing in somebody new into their lives and having to show the same kind of love or more or something stronger, it is just a very new concept even for these two characters, and they're almost like என் கையில love கொடுத்துட்டாங்க just என்ன பண்றதுன்னு தெரியாம they are just like playing with the ball or something like that, you know.
Yeah, and I think her character is somebody who like I think there's a sense of, I don't want to say entitled, but she's been given so much of this love by her father that like I think she understands that Vijay also likes her, so she's very
Yeah.
new to this game that he's playing with her, and not intentionally. So every we'll talk about this in all the scenes, because what's really interesting for me about this is we talked about the idea. It's like it's this, okay, it's this idea, right? But then how do you write it out as a full screenplay, or how do you put scenes that kind of establish this ongoing nature of what happens between them? And we'll go over that. But for me, like she's just not, she just doesn't get Vijay's, she thinks he's playing games. She thinks there's something more to what he's doing, but he's actually coming from it like, whatever I do, why is she sort of interpreting this in like all these wrong ways? What's wrong with her? And that's how he comes across with this whole thing. So the conflict just keeps adding more and more, and there's a point where it's like it becomes almost like a war.
It is something like people tell this, right? Like if we are holding rice in our hand little too tight, it'll start flowing away or something like that. So their love towards each other is just like they want everything they want, but but kind of in their way. I'll ask you this interesting question,
Sure.
Pirate.
Yeah.
How do you think how do you think their life will be after their marriage? Do you think they'll have a happy married life, or do you think they'll be a couple who will have arguments every week or month?
I mean, I hope so. I think there's a point where so there are things that I probably don't. I wish SJ Surya had done differently. This goes to one of them. So there's a moment like almost in the near the climax where their friend basically comes out of the car and he tells Vijay like நீ எனக்கு எவ்வளோ ஹெல்ப்
Yeah,
பண்ணிருக்க நான் உனக்கு ஒரு ஹெல்ப் பண்றேன் and then he
yeah.
basically flat out tells what's wrong with both of them and he basically like நீங்க ரெண்டு பேரும் இப்படி ஒளிவு மறைவா வச்சு எதுவுமே தெள்ள தெளிவா பேசாம இருக்கிறது is always going to cause
லவ்
issues.
பண்ணுங்கடா.
Right, so if they both take his advice and they both are like very clear about what they want and they stop these sort of things, which I hope that's what like I think the end of the movie conveys, because now like I think maybe people felt a little bit shocked by all the things that happened in the ending and the climax with like their open display of affection, but I think the point of that also is that now these characters don't feel inhibition like
Yeah.
I
Yes.
so I hope what I take away from it is that after their marriage they are not like this, and that's what
I
I'm hoping
think
for. Yeah.
that scene of them holding their hands as babies, as toddlers in that sari shop,
Hmm.
I think H.J. Surya kind of deliberately drags that scene out a lot.
Hmm.
Because again, towards the end when they're kai kuduttu, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and both of them will be exchanging words, right?
Hmm.
So around that time, S.J. Surya kind of establishes very strongly that these two guys are meant to be together so strongly, like they're even physically supposed to be together. And that is why at the end when they meet and they both accept that both of them love each other, that hug and that kiss felt very natural for those characters to do, because they had been holding the tension inside them for the entire 4 years or 3 years of their college,
Exactly.
you know.
Hmm.
So it was just an outburst of emotions, and
Yep.
it felt perfect. It felt like a perfect ending because of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. One other thing I just want to mention, since we're on the point of characters, is this music that Deva makes, which I every time that comes, I always laugh out loud in this movie. I don't think people. We'll talk about the meta aspect maybe towards the end, but like what I really like is the unintentional humor in this movie, not just from like the way these two characters are like overreacting to situations a bit. Um, but I think that music that he makes, it always reminds me
Yeah,
of Agni Nakshatramla Prabhu Karthik meet பண்ணும்போது ஒரு music
yeah,
play out
yeah,
ஆகும். It's exactly that music whenever like he does something that she doesn't like or he does like for example that music where I laughed out the most is when she's coming to him and talking about their friends' situation. And then Shiva takes out the cigarette and starts
yeah.
smoking in front of her. That scene always makes me laugh. And like Jyotika's expressions, even though there are situations where it feels like overreaction, it's perfect for that moment.
It feels perfect, honestly. It feels perfect for the big screen. I don't know if you noticed this, Pirate. This
Uh-huh.
movie had. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm coming out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
They had so many close-up shots, like so many. Through the
Hmm.
entire movie, it was like just a huge bubbly face of Vijay and Jyotika on the big screen, and they were like amazing for the roles that they had picked.
Yeah, and I want to ask you one question. Do you feel
Yeah.
like these two characters, does it bother you whenever you're watching this film that they are overacting? Is that even a concern for you at any
No,
point?
I see them as being immature, uh, but
Yes.
but they are in their early 20s, dude. So people are immature at that age, and I think I didn't feel like whatever they were doing was overboard. I feel this is what people do stupid stuff when they're young, and I feel this movie just was a replication of all that.
Yeah, and I think for all the people
So,
that like think this is a sticking point for them to not enjoy the film, like what I would say is like your point plus the fact that both of these characters are making up a performance that they don't like the other person. So I think that performance is what you see whenever like they have these expressions on their face, whenever they're doing all these additional things, they're putting on a performance for this other person. And what's also interesting for me personally is that that's another layer. So there's already a layer where they both know that they both like each other, and then they still have to bother putting up this performance in front of each other also every time, which is another hilarious thing for me. And I also probably feel that like I can definitely see SJ Surya acting out these
Yeah.
performances for them, which is what adds up the humor
So,
and hilarity for
on
me.
the Motta Madile, when for the first time when they're having the fight, Ange Vijay will be like, I like this. Of course, this is just,
அந்த மொமெண்ட் அதுக்கப்புறம் விஜயகுமார் அண்ட் விஜய் வந்து when they're sitting in the car பொம்பளை அவளுக்கு இருக்கும்போதே எனக்கு எவ்வளவு இருக்கும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லும்போது they both have this nod
yeah.
repeatedly. That I feel is another SJ Surya moment. And also I think
Dude, I miss this guy making movies, dude. I miss this Surya.
okay, cool. So let's dive into the screenplay of this a bit. So now I think okay, what I think this is a perfect segue because you've got this idea that you have these two characters who you've established that they're destined to be together. Then you've sort of set up their characterizations. So Shiva comes from this background, Jenny comes from this background. They both have this is what their prior experiences are. It's shaped them the way they are. Then they finally meet, even though they have technically met before. So now you have put these two characters here, right? What's interesting I think about the screenplay is its design of putting them in these different situations that creates the conflict we see like throughout the movie, right? So when we look at the overall movie, I think we can basically break it down into there's a first 50 minutes where they both don't technically like meet or talk to each other. So that's the initial part of setting up who they are, where they come from. And then there's like a ramp up of 30 minutes where everything happens because there are scenes that happen one after the other. And then that introduces us to an intermission. And then the second half is basically like broken down into two parts. There's a part where we kind of get to a point where we realize that even though they're fighting, they both like each other. And then there's like this last 30 to 35 minute stretch where they introduce Mumtaz, and then it extends this whole climax by another 15 minutes, in my opinion. So now that we've broken down in this way, let's just talk about overall. Now we have these different segments with us. So, that what
Yeah,
do you think are the
let me
ones that
just
work well?
explain the segments. Let me just explain these segments a little way in another way, like in another cinematic way, which Tamil cinema does a lot.
Hmm.
So there are, if I'm not wrong, there are five songs in the movies. One song is introduction for Jyotika in the first 45 minutes. One
Hmm.
introduction song for Vijay in the first 45 minutes. And in the small time that they're together for like 20 minutes or 25 minutes, there is a song for of them together.
Right.
Uh, and they're dancing for the college cultures. It's also so so yeah, college cultures. And
College
then there
cultures.
is
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, in the second half, then you have the O Maname, I think that's a sad song of both of them like driving in a car together, and the tension is just. Do you remember that scene, Pirate?
Yep.
So I felt that was one of the most like one of the better scenes in the movie for me personally. That O Maname song where they're just in the car and they can't do anything, and as actors, both of them shine. Like the entire movie was shining in those 3 4 minutes is what I felt. But yeah, so there is a song where they are like just longing to be together, and then finally Jyotika accepts him, and there is Yar Solva Yar Soyo. And then again, so this is Tripi Mumtaz and all that comes up. So that there's barely like two duets in this movie for a supposedly love movie, and there are totally like six songs,
Yep.
which is very rare for a romantic kind of movie. So this movie had a very interesting structure just because of that. Like even if people like I think I remember the first time I went to the movie theater, I kind of walked in only when Jyotika was dancing for Tak Chik Tak Jum.
Mm.
But I mean, I followed it up later. But it wasn't hard to catch up, but I mean, I was also a kid at that time. I didn't care. So So this movie does that very interestingly, like you said. I instead of the three act structure, I would honestly call it has like four acts, and the leads falling in love is basically the shortest of all those acts. Even though they are not in a very likable zone to each other for a very long time, we still long for them to be together. If I have to put it in another way,
Right.
and and just yeah, through the entire second half, we are just sitting through and just waiting for them to get together.
Yeah, I have to say, I think when I'm looking back at it, like I'm just wondering, in the 50 minutes cut பண்ணிருக்க முடியுமான்னு, where like at the beginning of, because you're getting to a point where you want both of them to meet. There's what's also interesting is in the 50 minutes, there's more characterization, and you understand more about Jyotika than Vijay, which I didn't think of it that way, because when I had first seen it, it was like, yeah, sure, like equal இருக்கிற மாதிரி தான் இருக்குன்னு I felt. But then, like, now that I'm like, whenever I rewatch this now, it becomes clear to me that, like, the through line for Jyotika's character, especially with her father, is a lot more clearer. And the background for Vijay it's there, but it's not as fleshed out. Like, you don't like kind of understand Vijay's mother, and like you understand the dynamic. Like every time, like he basically tells his mother something, his father kind of comes to his defense. So there's sort of this, or a triangular structure. And then I think in Jyotika's family, there's this thing where, like, her mother's almost non-existent, and Vijay
Yeah.
Kumar is the sort of central pillar to everything. But what I think that does really well is it gives you this very intense focus about what who Jyotika is, how is her relationship with her father, like kind of shaping everything, right? Whereas I felt, because you now have both Nilalgal Ravi and the mother who's Bengali, who speaks Bengali most of the time, there's sort of disconnect with understanding like who Vijay is and why is he trying to do all this, like why is he getting away. Like I understand the overburden or the overbearing nature of getting love from his parents, and that's like something he's trying to shy away from. But you never kind of really understand his character like the way you understand like Jyotika's character, which is done in like these which is more clear for me. That's what I take away from that
No,
first
I,
50
I,
minutes of
I
movie.
totally agree with what you're saying. Like, if this movie does have two lead characters, but if this movie is being said from somebody's point of view, it is more from Jyotika and her dad's point of view. Like, that's where the movie starts, and that's almost where the movie ends.
Hmm.
Uh, and Vijay is just a side character who comes into their story, kind of.
And to be honest, I think like that makes sense, because in the padam title Kushi, so இது யாரோடைய happiness அப்படின்றது, whenever I think about it, like there's even an explicit line early on in this act where Vijay Kumar tells like, if you're happy, I'm happy. And like you when she's refused to go to Bangalore to do this scout camp, and then finally when he accepts her and she goes there, and this is sort of the whole MCC college situation is a similar thing. Now she's found happiness to go here, but then there's this happiness of being together with Vijay, and um,
Yeah,
that's
and
yeah.
like you said, that's established multiple times in the first 45 minutes plus. Like, also like when I told you earlier about the scout camp, right?
Hmm.
So even that example is brought out for the equation between Vijay Kumar and Jyotika predominantly. So when you ask me if the first 50 minutes could have been taken out of equation, I don't really think. Maybe maybe the Vijay portions, like we are talking about it right now, maybe we really didn't need to know Vijay as much.
Hmm.
But I felt it was essential for us to know the crux of the love between, because I understand that, like we are talking about, like this is a story between mostly between Jyotika and Vijay, like Shiva and Jenny, but this is also a story between Jenny and her dad. So I
Hmm.
think it was an essential part of this screenplay being shaped up the way it was.
Yeah, and I honestly, wasn't very I wasn't able to buy the idea of like her being like distraught over the fiance, like, or her prospective bridegroom leaving and running away. Like I was expecting her to be a little bit more like happy, like, so there was a bit of like it always like that's a bit jarring for me, because whenever that happens and then you see that it has emotionally sort of affected her, you never get that sense because there are never any scenes between her and that guy. So there's never a sense of understanding like, oh okay, so she was definitely like into this and this affects her, because that is pivotal later on in the balcony scene where Vijay casually makes this line about saying that if they do get married, he's gonna like run away and leave her, right? So
Yeah.
it affects her emotionally there at that point, which I wish that was also something that kind of was incorporated into it. But you kind of get that she does it for her father more than for herself, which is why I'm not able to fully buy into that. But yeah, so that was definitely the first part.
Yeah.
So what do we think about like the conflicts where between the two of them, the whole ramp up to the intermission and then after? What do we think about like all of those scenes there?
I mean, honestly, so the first scene is of course where they are meeting with the அந்த ரெண்டு கை வச்சுட்டு அந்த விளக்கு அணையாம இருக்கிறதுக்காக that I mean the iconic love
Hmm.
scenes from Kollywood, right? So it starts from there, and after that it quickly follows up to every time the Jyotika has to end up telling sorry like 3 4 times. But it I think at end of all those three scenes, you just can see both of them kind of like smiling through the situation and seeing like this was so funny, and both of them kind of got an expression. Both of them know at almost at this point that they
Yeah.
like each other, and that is why even doubts like these make it a little funnier than they are supposed to be.
Hmm.
And I think that was enough for me to I didn't really need a huge plot point of why they are falling in love. It is love and it just happens, and it just happened for both of them, and I think I felt that was the most entertaining part of the movie, right? If all of us want to watch something from Kushi again, we are going to be watching that second quarter again, because it is just very likable, very cute, and memorable for me. So I think that was enough, even though it was a very short segment. I would love to see more of it, but for the story that they were trying to say, that was more than enough. And yeah, that's my favorite part of the movie still.
Yeah, I agree. I think if anyone's asking like why are they falling in love with each other, I think that temple scene pretty much establishes why. Like they are the two people that have noticed and care, and like everyone else isn't, and like they are the only two people there protecting that uh, lamp, and they're like making sure it doesn't go out. I think that's
Yeah,
very symbolic of the whole thing. And I think what I also really like, I mean, the balcony scene I think is infamous for a lot of things. When people like make fun of it, there's obvious jokes to it and all that. But I think what for me I take from the balcony scene is that that's really representative of their whole relationship. There's even a point where when that ends, there's a thing of well, if he has to admit that he saw her hip, then she has to admit that she likes him. That is the condition
equation.
for this to actually like work itself out. And you can see that that is basically how their like whole relationship is. It's like there has to be equal reciprocation from both sides. One person is not going to step down, and that's why I find it more like it's like a war basically. Like so there are the parts where they're fighting each other is what I personally enjoy more than actually the portions where like they basically like start to say that like they like each other or they have feelings for each other and all that. Like for me, the second half of everything that happens after their fight in the balcony is more infinitely more entertaining to me, because it's like all of those situations where they both have to go through this. They both don't really like it. Like you said, there's that and the Sogumana scene in the car, and the carla drive பண்ணிட்டு
Yeah,
வரும்போது and everything before that has also been like established really wonderfully. That's what I like about it. When the car breaks down, there is like a total lack of trust on her part that the car genuinely broke down, and he has to clarify that this time it was genuine.
yeah,
So I think that pretty much for me, like there are a lot of moments like that where it's like I could like, yeah, this could not have been like scripted better. Like there are so many things that are used again. none of the scenes that came out before, I think you can argue, are not necessary or elemental. That's what I really like about the screenplay. Like all the scenes totally flow with each other. They all make sense. The ashtray scene makes sense because it comes up so many times later.
When Jyotika is walking into the dance studio, Vijay is like, after that, Mumtaz Kattipuchte, he'll be like, your forehead, your eyes, your nose. He'll just exaggerate it so much because he's doing that because he knows Jyotika is
Yeah.
coming back. And Jyotika will be like, Shiva, and he'll be like, and நம்ம நான் இப்பதான் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டைம் அவளை பாக்குற மாதிரி நீ இங்க தான் இருக்கிய எவ்வளவு நேரம் எனக்கு தெரியாம போயிடுச்சு.
Yeah. That
Yeah, like you brought out the fact that they overact. At this point, of course, Vijay is acting. Vijay is acting to himself and to Jyotika at the same time.
I think the moments when he's drunk and he's actually like saying stuff out is when he's actually out of that
Yeah,
performance. Um,
yeah.
uh,
Because
yeah.
they do bring that up later in the movie. I think when he's writing the letter, he says that every night, at the end of the day, even though I fight with you, every day I go back, I just want to hold you tight and say I love you, I love you, I love you, and I'm not able to do that. So
Mhm.
they do mention that when he's writing the letter.
Cool. So that comes up to nearly like the end of our podcast. So I guess the
I
couple of
mean,
questions I have.
we missed the fourth segment about Mumtaz, but yeah.
Do we have to talk about it?
I mean, I'm happy there was an iconic scene of Vivek holding Mumtaz hand and crossing the road, but other than that, I don't know.
So actually, I have a question. நான் அந்த சீன் பார்க்கும்போது எனக்கு என்ன நினைச்சிட்டு இருந்தேன்னா, இஸ் தட் ஆக்சுவலி த மூவி தட் லைக் stereotypes this idea of ஒரு பொண்ணுனா லைக் நல்ல பொண்ணுனா இந்த blind people ரோட்ல கிராஸ் பண்ணி ஹெல்ப் பண்றதுன்றது, because that comes up in so many movies later on that they
Yeah,
make fun of that trope. But I don't know if this movie is what maybe there is a serious movie that does it and this movie makes fun of it also.
yeah.
I don't know. But like yeah.
So, viewers, if you know the answer, where you saw this for the first time, please let us know. I would be curious to know where it started. Yeah.
Now that we've talked about all of this, that now that there are probably folks who are listening who haven't seen this movie, I mean, I'm not sure why you would at this particular point, but if you have not seen this movie, Dart, how would you convince them that they should watch Kushi in 2025?
Convince. I mean, see, people love entertaining movies at the end of the day. Like all of us love entertaining movies, and I feel if people just want to be entertained and just laugh a little bit at the goofiness of the actress on the screen, I don't know if you're gonna feel love like a Maniratnam movie or something, but you're gonna be thoroughly entertained and you're gonna be rooting for two characters to be together, and it's just that simple story which you can just sit down and watch and have a good time. I mean, I don't think you need a bigger reason than just having a good time.
Okay. I for me, whenever I think about this film, I it's definitely not coming from a place of this was like a portrayal of a really healthy relationship. So I definitely don't think that. But when I compare this to other romantic films, I think what's very interesting for me for this film is there's a very clear um I feel like the way they portrayed the leads like falling in love with each other in this movie is a sign of what I feel we don't get many movies like that. Like often what I find is that there's always like an initial period of courtship where you have to convince this person that this is why you have to love me. And we
Yeah,
we have a lot of Tamil films like that, sometimes to the extreme where they have to keep following that person for long. Like we know all these movies, right?
yeah,
And we've talked about Vinay Tandivaraya before, and it was like an interesting conversation that I was having with someone else. With this movie, there is none of that. I find like it's very clear that Jenny and Shiva like each other. Their problems are just their like specific problems, like it's their behavioral problems rather than anything external, like we said before. So
yeah.
it's
Like
also
like
very clear, yeah.
for example, just to add on to your point, right? Like the Vijay Kumar character is one of those characters in the late 90s and late 80s. வேற இவ்வளவு பெரிய மீசை வச்சுட்டு கிராமத்துல இருந்து ஒருத்தவங்க வராங்கன்னா they will oppose love and they are going to be the main villain of the story. In this, Vijay Kumar is like, I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Uh, I just want you to get married. That's all I care about. So,
Yeah, it
I
breaks
mean, he doesn't
conventions
say
in
it
different
explicitly,
ways.
just go and find yourself, go and fall in love. But what he means is, I'm okay with whatever, you know. I just want you to get married and stay and have a happy life and
Hmm.
stay cushy.
I definitely think there are a lot of behavioral ways where their relationship isn't healthy. But what I really find refreshing for me, and there have been very few like rom com films. I wouldn't say this is a rom com film necessarily, but it's comedy in the sense that it's unintentional and in the way they act, and that is played out as comedy in some cases. But um, I think for me, when I see this, it the way they both connect with each other, the way they both like each other, it's very reciprocal. And there are, I feel, very few Tamil films that do that, where the lead doesn't have to justify why like he needs to be liked, why he's lovable. Like there's none of that in this film. Like they both know from the get-go that they like each other. And for me, if you haven't seen movies like probably like Mary movie movies like that, for me that's why I think you should watch Kushi. And you should like watch it from the lens of how Dart was saying, that you have to understand that these two characters are not very mature, and they feel that they have to put up this performance in front of each other. Who knows why, but they have to basically like pretend that they don't like each other until this other person confesses. And I think if you get that characterization, I think you'll really like this movie like a lot. um,
This movie, so I was just thinking about it right now. More than putting it in the romance category, I would put this in the romance drama kind of category. This is more drama than romance, and the drama is very entertaining.
mhm, absolutely.
So, so if you love entertaining dramas, I think this is your cup of tea.
All right. Yeah, I think that's probably a really good place to stop. But yeah, so that was our discussion of the movie Kushi, which I just want to mention that it's celebrating 25 years of its initial release in Tamil cinema. So if you haven't watched Kushi, there are many places that you can go and watch this movie now. Watch it, and if you already have, let us know what you think about this film. Leave us some comments down below in our episodes. We'd love to get back to you, and we'd love to hear what you think. Um, so we'll see you again in another episode of the r/Kollywood podcast. Until then, signing off, Pirate and Dart.
See you
Bye.
guys. Bye.
ஐயோ பெருமாளே, ஏன் ஜனங்களுக்கு இவ்வளவு அலட்சி? யாருக்கும் ஒழுக்கமில்ல, யாருக்கும் பொறுப்பில்ல, யாருக்கும் இறக்கமில்ல, யாருக்கும்
என்னாச்சு? யாருமே சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ண மாட்டேங்கிறப்பா.
ஆரம்பிச்சிட்டியா?